In a very surprising move, Ford just announced that they are cutting production of their electric Ford F-150 Lightning by 50% in 2024. They cited changing market demand as the reason. But from January to November of this year, 2023, Ford sold 20,365 Ford F-150 Lightnings. And what is really weird is just a couple weeks ago, Jim Farley, CEO of Ford, posted that October was a record month and that November broke October sales numbers. So today we have Hans Nelson joining us, and he's going to help us walk us through kind of why is Ford doing this, what's happening, and kind of put everything in context. Welcome, Hans.
Happy to be here, Herbert.
So you and I have done a few videos covering Ford, of course. This one's a little surprising. Let's take a look at the news. Just came out, said they're cutting their F-150 Lightning production by 50% in 2024. They cited changing market demand as the reason, and they started to tell suppliers to prepare. Instead of 3,200 average a week, they're only going to make 1,600 Lightnings a week starting in January. This is the Ford F-150 Lightning. And just if we dive deep into the actual conversation here, they're going to continue to match production with customer demand. Again, they're kind of trying to position this as a demand reason. But before its plans changed, the Ford planned to produce 3,200 per week. And they plan to execute its new F-150 production plans. So they're going to change in 2024. They cited market demand. Now, this is following the news that shocked everybody when they said they're going to postpone their investment of $12 billion. So in this case, it does make sense that they're already going to slow things down. And then here's why. The Model E, which is their electric vehicle division, lost $1.3 billion, double its loss in 2022. So if you're continue to lose so much money, and they're making money on their regular gas cars, why would they stop? So what's your thinking on that?
Yeah, it's kind of a classic innovator's dilemma. I was just doing the math on that. 1,600 cars per week it is basically 80,000 Lightnings in a year if they're able to actually sell, what they're producing. And I think in 2023 so far, they're on track to do maybe between 20 and 25,000 total Lightning deliveries. And so they are still planning to grow their overall production and deliveries from where they're at, just not as much. So, if 3,200 is double to 1,600, so probably their plans were for roughly 150, 160,000 vehicles a year sold next year. And instead, now they're cutting that down to 80,000, which is a significant reduction. And yeah, total F-150 sales are somewhere, south of, I think, 500,000. The whole F1 or F lineup, F-150, F-250, F-350, they do, I think, almost a million, roughly somewhere in between 700,000 and a million vehicles per year. But the F-150 itself, is probably somewhere in the 300,000 to 500,000 range. And so if they were able to, deliver 150,000 Lightnings next year, that would have accounted anywhere from half to, a third potentially of their overall F-150 Lightning or F-150 lineup. And that would have been really an excellent development for Ford and for just the EV adoption in general. But it seems like whether they're doing this based on they're going to hold pricing, for whatever reason, they decided they either can't sell those vehicles or they actually don't want to sacrifice the profits that they make, because those F-150s are highly profitable vehicles if they sell them in the ICE configuration. And so basically killing your golden goose that keeps your company in business in order to transition to an electric version of that you lose anywhere from, I think, right now it's $30,000 a vehicle. That's big. Hopefully that loss would shrink dramatically in order for them to deliver that many vehicles. But I mean, shoot, even if it's just flat and before you were making lots of money on those vehicles, that's a huge hit to the pocketbook. And obviously there's shareholders that they have to keep happy. And when I said that, this is classic innovator's dilemma, that's the problem that large incumbents face, is that they have existing products that have good margin structures. And in order to transition to a new technology, you have to sacrifice a high margin product or a low margin product that's also in low volumes. And so it just doesn't move the needle on your overall business. You can't really make a good business case for why you should do that at this stage. But the problem is, this is an adoption S curve, and that 10 years from now, at the very least, potentially sooner, that everything's going to go electric. And so it's something that they know they need to do eventually, but they can't justify doing it right now because they just lose too much money.
Yeah, it is sad though, right? Because the Ford F-150 Lightning seem to be doing very well. And so, we don't want to lose these electric vehicles being made. And so everybody's slowed down their production. Here's Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, just announcing literally a week ago that in October, Ford had a record month for F-150 Lightning sales. We just broke another record with November being our best ever sales month for Lightning, with nearly 4,400 EV trucks, 100% increase from last year. So, he just announced this last week, and then now they announced that they're going to cut it for January. So they sold 4,393 F-150 Lightnings in November, their best month ever, double the sales in November 2022. And they expect us to believe they're cutting production because of a slowdown in demand.
Well, you do have to take into account, I think that 3,200 vehicles was, wasn't that per week?
Yes.
So 3,200 a week
production. Yeah.
Production is way out in front of 4,400 sold in a month.
Gotcha.
And so, if you can basically supply your entire month with a week and a half to 2 weeks worth of production, then it kind of makes sense. If they are seeing that this is it keeps growing. So I don't know. They've got a full, with Ford, they have dealers, and so they have channels that they have to fill up. There's a lot of dealer lots that these trucks are sitting on. And so they have kind of a delayed response in matching their production with sales, because they have this buffer of all this dealer inventory that they have to fill up. So hopefully we'll see F-150 sales continue to climb. But yeah, if they want to make 3,200 of these a week, then that's almost 12,000 a month in sales that they have to do, or more than that, depending on how much downtime they have. So yeah, still a ways. That's only a third of where they really need to be in order to produce and sell the exact same number of vehicles in a month.
That's a good point. The difference between a week and a month. Thanks for pointing that out to me. Here's a question for you. So, they sold 20,365 Lightnings from January to November of this year. And like you were saying, let's say call it 25,000, something below that. But Tesla just launched a Cybertruck, and they have an installed capacity of 125,000 Cybertrucks a year. And it's funny that people are saying that, Cybertrucks are going to be such small volumes. It's just going to be a niche product. But they're already going to become, by next year, the biggest sales for electric vehicle trucks. So do you think that Ford, part of the equation, was Cybertruck coming out?
It certainly has to weigh in their mind. They can't really measure at this point what the impact of that's going to be. I'm thinking that if Omar is saying that we have 125,000 worth of Cybertruck annual production installed right now, so that's probably a single line. And so they're probably in the process of commissioning a second line for the Cybertruck as they ramp up. And so it'll probably be 2 vehicle lines, I would expect, will constitute the 250,000 a year annual production. And we have such a large backlog for this vehicle that we could even grow beyond that. They may end up having to add a third line at some point in the future. And that's, I think the market can probably absorb 125 to 250,000 Cybertrucks a year without that having any meaningful demand for Ford, especially since there's so many buyers that are just, lined up for a Cybertruck for a long time. But once you start exceeding that, I would think that that would really bite into F-150 Lightning share in the total marketplace. Especially, if you look at the COGS that we would expect on a Cybertruck that's delivering that many vehicles a year versus the COGS that Ford would see producing, 150,000 Lightnings. I think they're going to be at lower volume, higher overall cost structure. Obviously, they aren't as good at vertical integration. Their cost is already going to be higher beforehand. So if you layer in lower economies of scale and a less efficient production manufacturing line, that gets really tough to compete.
Well, this is the thing, right? We want electric vehicles to proliferate and succeed. Meantime, these legacy automakers are trying to, they dabbled into it. But by the time they roll this out, Tesla has a competitor. Now you got their Cybertruck, which is going to have amazing margins on it, better features, technology. You know what I mean? Like they need to have the F-150 Lightning at scale in order to even stop losing money. How do you get there when you've got this company that is just blowing you out of the water? So in a way that it's good news for Tesla, but bad news for the industry, bad news for electric vehicles in general. I just don't know how many of these other car companies, how they're going to succeed. When Tesla came out with their Model S, they went with a high premium offering at the time. Really bad timing, but they had, no one else was offering a high premium electric vehicle. And then now you got the Luces of the world trying to come up with a high premium offering, but you've got the Model S there. So it's like you're in a totally different environment than you are now. And this seems like what's happening again with the trucks in this example, or even other cars. So by the time they catch up,
the only thing that I could see that would help Ford in this scenario is if the demand for Cybertruck actually stays so high that Tesla cannot bring the price down for a while. Like, if the ramp for Cybertruck is slow, that will mean that, in the supply and demand curve, that the pricing for Cybertruck will stay higher for longer than we want for overall adoption. But that would give Ford a little bit more time in order to continue to reach their economies of scale and grow their production. So that's kind of what they need to be hoping for, but they also need to be moving as quickly as possible to get their supply chain in line, to get all their manufacturing costs down as low as possible. And like we said, all of that happens through economies of scale. And so it's just, it's a tough spot.
Yeah. And Jeff Lutz keeps pointing out that when you decide to, pull back the gas pedal in this case, and you're, in October, they idled 3 shifts at the Lightning plant. It was supposed to be temporary, affecting 700 workers. And then they're talking to suppliers, telling them to reduce their expectations. You can't just turn them on and off in a dime. Many of the suppliers are going to be affected. You may not be able to get back what they already had when you do these kind of things. And so we'll see if this is a death blow or if it can actually be managed as we move forward. All right. Thank you so much, Hans. Appreciate that. Follow Hans on his YouTube channel, Hans C. Nelson. Thanks, everybody. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.